Hello, Star Trek fans, and welcome to the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast. My name is Kim.
And my name is James.
And we're watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine from the beginning, one episode at a time. Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are on Season 6, Episode 11, Waltz. This episode aired January 8th, 1998. Before we talk about this one, anything to say about last week's episode, The Magnificent Ferengi?
No, it was perfect.
Yeah, I thought it was a perfect podcast. For a change, we didn't hate on everything about a Ferengi episode.
Yeah, it was a good, fun episode, and the Ferengi really kind of made it in that one.
Yeah.
And Iggy Pop is terrifying as a Vorta.
Yeah, he was a very scary Vorta, no doubt. Well, the interesting thing about this episode is we're bringing Dukat back, and the episode that we actually are releasing today out to the world is Sacrifice of Angels, which is the undoing of Dukat. So yes. I have all of that very fresh in my mind because I just listened to that episode this morning.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
And you think, though, with the name Waltz, this could at least be a musical episode.
Yeah, again, no music. I didn't look up what the name meant. Do you know what it means?
It's a dance.
No, why it's titled Waltz.
Well, I think because it is actually a dance between the two of them. It is kind of a dance of rivals or enemies.
Well, maybe, except Dukat is not 100%, so it's not exactly a dance of peers at this point.
But it is a dance of opposites.
Yeah. Well, should we begin?
Absolutely.
In the cold open, Sisko is on board the USS Honshu, along with Dukat, who's being transported to appear before a Federation grand jury. Sisko has avoided talking to him, though the doctors have assured him that Dukat has made a full recovery since his little mental break back in Sacrifice of Angels.
Yep.
He's recording a log as he walks slowly to visit Dukat, saying there's a part of him that wishes Dukat were dead, but that's a thought unworthy of a Starfleet officer.
I would wonder why you would want to go and see him in the first place.
Yeah, why bother?
Yeah.
He says he lost an empire and a daughter, and he nearly lost his mind. Isn't that enough punishment for one lifetime? No, it isn't.
I'm thinking his victims are going to say no.
Yeah, definitely. So he finds Dukat doing some kind of meditation on the floor in his cell, and he does seem to be back to his usual unpleasant self, saying that the doctors say he's made a remarkable recovery. Dukat tries to get Sisko to say whether or not he thinks that he's guilty, and Sisko avoids answering, saying he hasn't seen all of the charges.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know exactly all of the things that you're guilty of.
Yeah. That wasn't a ringing endorsement of lack of guilt. It was just, no. I don't know all your crimes yet.
Yeah. Sisko says he's very sorry about Zial, and Dukat wonders if Dr. Cox put him up to asking that question, but Sisko says it was his idea. He wanted to offer his condolences. Dukat apologizes for being suspicious, saying her death is what brought on his momentary instability.
Yes, it was nothing serious. It was just a momentary issue.
Yeah.
I think that's very Cardassian to downplay it. We've talked in the past about how Cardassians downplay any kind of phobia or maybe mental illness.
Yeah.
And would see that as a type of weakness. So I could totally see Dukat playing down that he had this mental break.
Yeah. Well, they will be arriving at their destination tomorrow at noon. But before Sisko leaves, Dukat thanks him for taking care of his daughter when she was on the station. Sisko says she was a very special woman and it was a pleasure to have her on the station, even if it was for such a short time. Unfortunately, before Sisko leaves the room, the Honshu is attacked and there's a call for battle stations. And we cue the theme song.
Okay, we're going to just jump into things straight away here.
Yeah.
Firstly, the way Avery manages to convey absolute loathing for this man. It made me feel like Sisko just couldn't stand even being in the same room as Dukat.
Yeah.
It was great acting here because you could really feel Sisko.
Yeah, you could see his distaste for Dukat, but you could also see how just really uncomfortable he was in the situation. Which does beg the question again of why did he even come to see him?
Sometimes confront your demons, maybe?
I mean, the only reason he came to see him, I think, is because they needed to be close to each other.
Okay, that's a good point.
Or the attack, yeah.
The next thing I want to bring up here is Sisko is displaying some remarkable empathy for this awful criminal and his enemy. To me, it just reinforces how completely out of character and poorly written for the uniform was. Sisko committing war crimes without any real care.
Yeah.
It so makes that episode look even worse.
That one's still bugging you.
Yes. It's so ridiculously out of character.
Yeah. Well, I think Sisko does have a unique understanding of parenthood.
Yeah.
So that maybe makes him a little bit more empathetic in this situation.
Yeah.
But I take your point. Now we go to the station where Kira is telling the crew that the USS Honshu was destroyed by Cardassian destroyers.
Yep.
There are distress beacons from 3 escape pods and 1 shuttlecraft. The search area is pretty big and there are only 2 ships nearby. The Defiant is one of the ships being deployed, but in 52 hours, the Defiant is supposed to escort a Federation troop convoy, and it will take 12 hours to reach the search area and then 12 hours to reach the convoy. So they have only 52 minus 24 hours, which I'm sure someone can do the math. Not me.
Yes, there's this troop convoy that's unprotected.
Yes.
Do we want to talk about Federation planning and Starfleet strategy again?
Well, yeah, because Kira says it's 30,000 troops. How could we have nobody protecting 30,000 troops and even sending the Defiant? How are you only sending 1 ship? It seems crazy.
But it's in the Badlands. So, it'll affect sensors. And it's not like the Jem'Hadar in the past have found everything in the Badlands and killed all the Maquis.
Yeah, this is crazy. They're just trying to give some big dramatic excuse that the Defiant could only search for a short period of time.
I'm pretty sure this was planned. This whole thing was planned by one of those stuffed shirt admirals.
Yeah.
I'm giving an order.
We'll just send 1 ship.
I'm starting to think maybe the augments from statistical probabilities might have been right. They looked at Starfleet's planning and went, oh my God, they're idiots. Are they trying to lose?
Yeah, it's possible. Some of these things are a little crazy. Obviously, we're not supposed to focus on this. We're supposed to focus on the fact that they only have 52 minus 24 hours.
Yeah.
And that's the whole story.
Yeah. At the end of this scene, Kira says, you've got this limited time. Don't feel you have to rush because I've got my office back now.
No. She tells Worf that he has to get to the rendezvous point on time, and Worf says he understands. And then Miles, Dax, and Worf head to the Defiant. Maybe we should move a little faster since time is of the essence.
Yeah. Well, and you can see Kira's starting to move stuff back into her office.
I don't think so. Now we find Dukat and Sisko in a cave somewhere with a raging fire. It seems that the left side of Sisko's body is covered in plasma burns and the bones in his left arm are shattered. When the ship was attacked, a plasma conduit exploded and Dukat and another Starfleet officer found Sisko and carried him to the shuttle. But that officer was killed. It's hard here to know what's true, but Sisko is grateful that Dukat saved him.
Yeah.
Dukat managed to get them away from the attack and set them down on this planet, wherever this is. But he says the shuttle's engines were damaged by the shockwave and it won't be able to reach orbit again. Convenient.
Very.
And the distress beacon from the shuttle was also damaged, but he claims that he's repaired it and he's broadcasting a general distress call. Whoever gets there first will find 1 comrade in arms and 1 prisoner, meaning could be the Dominion or could be the Federation who get there first.
Yeah, it's not going to be good for one of them.
Right.
Actually, I don't think it would be that good for either of them because I'm fairly sure if the Dominion arrive and find Dukat there, they're going to have a show trial for him.
Yeah, maybe, because he did mismanage the war.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I could see the Cardassians who love to point the finger at it was somebody else's problem.
Oh, yeah. They're definitely already pointing fingers at Dukat.
Yeah.
For sure. Because I'm sure Damar is helping that along.
Oh, completely.
Well, they have enough field rations to last a few weeks, but Dukat wants to try and locate another source of food and water. He's sure he can find some edible vegetation, but he says the surface of the planet is pretty inhospitable. Sisko asks why he didn't leave him behind, and Dukat says he didn't want to, and then he heads out to forage for food. I thought that was funny.
Yep.
When he's out of earshot of Sisko, we see Dukat now talking to Weyoun, which was a shock.
Yep.
And Weyoun asks what he's planning to do with Sisko. Dukat says the captain and I have a lot to talk about. Weyoun makes fun of him for wanting to share his feelings with his longtime adversary.
Yes, he's openly mocking him.
He tells Dukat to just kill Sisko, but Dukat says he's no threat to him. There's plenty of time for that. Weyoun continues to taunt him about how he cried himself to sleep every night and he had to be sedated while undergoing treatment. Dukat then gets annoyed, pulls out his phaser and fires at Weyoun, but it turns out Weyoun isn't really there.
He just shoots into empty space.
I was very confused at first when Weyoun appeared. I was like, wait a minute, how did Weyoun get here? And then, of course, he's not really there.
Yeah, you realize that Dukat has some problems.
He's got some issues. Some ongoing issues.
Yeah.
Back at the campsite, and Dukat is making breakfast over a hot plate. He tastes it and spits it out, and then he feeds it to Sisko, which, when someone spits out food before feeding it to you, I mean, don't eat that. It was so weird.
Oh, man, this is terrible. Hey, try it.
Try this. You did that to me once where you're like, I think this is spoiled. Taste it. No.
In my defense, I wasn't sure.
Or it's like when people smell something terrible and then, here, smell this. No, I believe you. Dukat tells Sisko to have a sense of humor about their current predicament. He's like, just a few hours ago, I was a prisoner and my dear old friend came to see me, and now I'm free, and now you're a prisoner of your own battered body. Sisko remains unamused.
Dukat is so weirdly jolly and happy in this scene. Sisko's got to be thinking, okay, this is creepy.
Except the Cardassians are always putting on a show. I'm sure he's just trying to figure out what the show is.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, they always like to put a face on, put a positive spin on things. Yeah. We've kind of seen that before.
Yes.
When he was with Kira looking for his daughter.
Yeah, we absolutely have seen this before. Well, then Dukat suddenly seems to hear a noise, but then he claims, oh, it's just the wind. And then Dukat asks how everyone on the station is doing, and Sisko says, they're fine, and they don't miss you. That was funny.
And then Dukat says, they never really gave me much of a chance.
No. He says, they were too busy plotting my downfall.
Oh, poor Dukat. Really, nobody gave him a chance.
No.
It's all their fault.
It's always somebody else's fault. He says, hopefully they told Sisko that his policies to the Bajorans were generous. And then he starts making a bunch of excuses about how he was trying to rectify the past and begin a new chapter with the Bajorans.
He goes straight back to that benevolent dictator line. Mm-hmm. That is so Dukat. We've seen it repeated. And this is, I think, this is the culmination of his whole, I was the strict father kind of thing.
Yeah. It's so condescending.
Yes.
Sisko doesn't really take the bait here.
No.
He asks why Dukat cares what he thinks, and Dukat says, don't you care what your old friends think of you? And Sisko says, we are not old friends. I'm grateful you saved my life, but that's all there is to it. And then Dukat hears another noise and decides to go make sure everything is okay.
It's interesting that Sisko starts noticing it.
Yeah.
Because Dukat just keeps on making these sharp head movements.
Yes.
As if he's actually looking at something in the cave.
It's like a cat, though. They're always looking. Yeah. They hear noises all the time, and you're like, is there something there?
Well, one thing I want to bring up here as well is I think it was the camera angles and the lighting and the makeup, but Marc Alaimo looks so reptilian here.
Yeah.
There are some side shots where you sort of see his neck and all the makeup, and it really does make him look like an evil lizard.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
Really quite spectacular.
And it's so dark in this whole episode. Yeah. So that, too, I think is leading him to look like a non-human, I guess.
Yeah. I assume that was a very deliberate directing choice, but it works perfectly.
Yeah.
If it's unintentional, it's brilliant.
Well, now, in another part of the cave, Dukat is talking to Damar. And Damar says, without you, the war will be lost. Don't let this one man stand in the way of your final triumph.
Damar is totally talking Dukat up.
Well, sure.
Cardassia needs Dukat.
Because this is Dukat in his mind.
Yes.
Dukat says he has to know that Sisko respects him. And Damar says, you know he respects you, but he won't give you the satisfaction of saying it. Kill him and be done with it.
Yeah, and this version of Damar says to him, in his heart, he secretly admires you.
Right, yes. Back at the camp, we get a camera angle that allows us to see the distress beacon says it's transmitting on the front, but on the back it says it's offline.
Yes.
Never before has a piece of Starfleet equipment been so clear about its working status. There are these huge letters spelling it out. This has never happened before. Remember that episode where, actually I think it was Sacrifice of Angels, where Miles is looking at a screen and it's just static, but he's saying, oh, it's saying all these things? That's usually what happens. The fact that here it says online, offline, never happens.
Well, if it's obvious, then why would you need Starfleet engineers?
Right.
Maybe that's one of the secrets of Starfleet engineers. A lot of the stuff is they just have like a piece of equipment that they plug in and it actually displays what the problem is.
Oh, maybe. Well, Damar continues to tell Dukat how amazing he is and what a hero he'd be, bringing back the body of the dead emissary and showing Bajor that the prophets have abandoned them.
It's actually not a terrible plan if you're like an evil dictator.
Yeah, if you're evil. Back at the camp, Sisko now sees the distress beacon isn't really working. He sits back down and pretends not to know, but he's trying to understand exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
Dukat continues to talk to Damar, even though now we see that Damar's not there. He finally returns to the camp and finds Sisko trying to get water out of the ration kit. Sisko tells Dukat that the comm system might need recalibrating because it was beeping, and Dukat makes a show of opening it up and looking at it, but he says everything is working just fine.
Yeah.
So now Sisko knows that he's hiding something.
Nice play. He now knows it's completely deliberate.
Yep. Meanwhile, the Defiant has rescued 12 Honshu survivors so far, and they only have 12 hours left in their search, so they're getting nervous.
Yep.
At the campsite, Sisko has broken off a tine of his fork and is quietly fixing the distress beacon, while Dukat is off doing something. He manages to get it back online, which, by the way, he had to use some percussive maintenance from Jankum Pog. And we see the Defiant now reading a new distress call. Sisko then hears Dukat returning and quickly cleans up any evidence that he was messing with the beacon. Dukat has found some cushions on the shuttle to make themselves more comfortable. He says, we can be honest with each other, and he asks Sisko what he really thinks of him. Before Sisko says anything, Dukat imagines Major Kira talking right into his ear, saying he's an evil, sadistic man who should have been tried as a war criminal years ago and put up against a wall and shot.
Yes, she is like right at his shoulder.
And Dukat is trying to ignore it.
Also here, Dukat brings that two old friends line again.
Yeah, he's delusional.
He's a little obsessed with this.
Yeah.
He wants Sisko to see him as a friend.
Well, he wants Sisko to see them as equals.
Yeah.
And we learn more about what he wants everyone to see as we go on.
Yeah.
And I just think for some reason, it's just really important to him that, he said it earlier, that Sisko respects him, but he wants to hear it. He wants to hear it come out of Sisko's mouth so he can be right. He tells Sisko that his name and reputation have been slandered and twisted since the end of the occupation, and he wonders if Benjamin, keeps calling him Benjamin, is one of the many people who vilify him.
Yes, how tragic. His legacy has been tarnished by these people.
Sisko says he wasn't around during the occupation, so he doesn't know what Dukat had to struggle with every day. He's definitely trying to play along here because he doesn't know what's happening.
Yeah.
He says he can't pass judgment, but the Major Kira phantom says he thinks you're a vicious, cold-blooded killer. When Dukat tells her to keep her opinions to herself, now he says that out loud, and Sisko wonders who he's talking to.
Yeah, it's actually out in the open here. Sisko can actually see Dukat is talking to someone not there.
Eventually, Sisko says he's right. He has been judged unfairly. He's sure Dukat had good reasons for everything he did on Bajor. And Dukat is like, yes, I did have good reasons.
Well, Dukat is just in this whole cycle of justifying all of his actions on Bajor again.
Yes.
He's saying it was forced on him by his superiors.
The harsh decisions.
Yes, he wanted a softer touch.
Right. Well, he wanted to be their parent.
Yes.
Which nobody there wanted. He says he wanted to use entirely different tactics from what Central Command was telling him. He wanted to rule with a softer hand. Now, Kira is behind him, just laughing her head off, which really irritates Dukat.
Yep.
And he jumps up and shouts, "Leave us alone."
Yeah, she's calling him a fool.
But of course, Sisko can't see who he's talking to and is getting increasingly uncomfortable.
Well, he has to shout at Dukat just to get his attention.
Yes.
Dukat is so focused on this Kira that he's seeing.
And finally, Dukat says, Nerys is always trying to upset me, and then he points at the hallucination. And when Sisko says, we should just ignore her, the phantom Major Kira behind him sort of nods and puts her finger up to her lips like, shh. It is so funny. It was laugh out loud funny. I laughed out loud both times I watched this episode.
Well, it's so out of character for Kira.
Oh, yeah.
It fits perfectly with just how Dukat is behaving.
It was almost like the Mirrorverse version of Kira. That is something that she would do.
Yes, without the great clubbing gear.
Yes. Up on the Defiant now, Dax is picking up 2 humanoid life forms on the surface of a planet, and they prepare to transport them up. I did do a time check here, and I knew this wasn't the end, so it didn't fool me.
Oh, that's almost cheating.
Well, but I'm also, as I'm taking notes, right, writing down the time. Don't you do that, though, when you're watching a show? Just look to see, oh, there's still 10 minutes left. This is not the end.
Yeah, completely.
Sisko, now trying to keep Dukat calm, says there's no reason to get upset. It's just two old soldiers talking around the campfire. Meanwhile, Major Kira says it's going to be fun watching him beat you, Dukat. And she starts laughing again, and this makes Dukat just snap.
Yep.
And he starts firing his phaser at the imaginary Kira. Sisko just ducks to avoid being hit.
Yeah, and all the while he's shooting, you're hearing it from Dukat's perspective, and you can just hear Kira's laughter echoing in the cave.
Yeah. Dude, you have lost it.
There's some really nice directing touches here, I think.
Yep, agreed. On the Defiant, they beam up two women, and everyone seems disappointed that they saved some random strangers instead of Commander Sisko.
Oh.
I mean, they are two Starfleet people, but they're like, ugh.
I suppose we should look after them.
That was funny.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't supposed to be, but it was. Back at the campfire now, Dukat finds the tool that Sisko used to fix the communication thingy, which enrages Dukat. So he shoots the beacon and destroys it. And then we see up on the Defiant that Dax was tracking the distress signal, but it disappears.
Yep.
Dukat says he thought they had established trust, but now that's gone. He says he can't abide betrayal. And then this is when the episode sort of turned for me.
Yeah.
And he seems to hit Sisko's broken arm with a metal bar.
He completely lost it and starts beating Sisko.
Yeah, I don't want to see that. That was violent.
Throughout this scene, though, Alaimo has just portrayed Dukat as completely terrifying. There's the part earlier on when he's talking with Sisko and his eyes are literally staring as wide as you can imagine. And it's giving this real sense of something's just so wrong with him.
I don't know. I've seen him as terrifying for a long time.
Yeah.
This episode didn't make him any scarier to me.
I think the way Alaimo was playing him was straight out horror movie. I think before he's been sort of a quietly terrifying character.
Yeah, equally dangerous, I would say.
Yes, equally dangerous.
But yes, now it's on the surface.
Yeah, now it's almost coming to horror movie villain level.
Right.
The other thing in this scene is, and I was slightly surprised by this, Dukat didn't bring up that other line he'd used with Kira in the episode when they were looking for his daughter, about how the Bajorans were better for him because they'd been tempered with Cardassian steel.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't bring up that aspect of it as well, of he was lifting them up.
Right, that he made them so much better. That's right. Oh, that was annoying in that episode.
Yeah, exactly.
They had a lot of other ground to cover.
Yeah, there's a lot in here.
On the Defiant now, Worf is asking Major Kira, the real one, not the hallucination, for a few more hours to search. The signal keeps breaking up, but it's still pretty clear what she's saying.
Yeah.
And Bashir says that he couldn't understand a word she said. Dax said she could understand everything that Kira said and asks Worf if he understands the message. Worf kind of sighs and he says, "We all know what the orders are. It would be dishonorable to ignore those orders now." Bashir, like a giant baby, says, "You'll forgive me if I don't consider your honor to be worth Captain Sisko's life." So I guess he would trade one life of Sisko for 30,000 troops?
Well, I think he has very little understanding of Worf's concept of duty and honor, which is kind of interesting for someone who's supposed to be so smart.
Excellent point. The best part of the scene is Worf tells him he can leave the bridge, which he thankfully does, and they set a course for the next planet.
I thought that was very good. That was Worf doesn't get annoyed. This is very Starfleet Captain Worf.
True.
He doesn't get annoyed.
Yep.
He doesn't revert to the Klingon approach.
He doesn't say, "I'll kill you where you stand."
Yeah.
That's what I thought was going to happen.
He does a very calm, captain-like thing.
Yep.
Please leave the bridge, Mr. Bashir. I like that a lot. Another thing I want to bring up here is Kira tells him that this convoy was keeping strict radio silence and had timings on it. Like the convoy couldn't be hiding in the Badlands and listen for a "it's okay to go" signal.
Yeah.
Rather than just coming out and going, "Oh, we all got slaughtered." Who does the planning?
That's like that thing in, was it Favor the Bold, where they had a plan that something was going to happen at 8 o'clock, but for some reason, they had no ability to give each other signals?
Yeah, they can remain silent. How about you on the other side can transmit, "Okay, it's safe, we're going here." What if the Defiant, worst case scenario, got destroyed on the way there?
Excellent point.
No backup plan?
Well, back to the campsite, and Dukat is cleaning the blood off of whatever he used to hit Sisko.
And he's blaming Sisko for the beating. Clearly, it was Sisko's fault for provoking him.
Right. Sisko is bloodied and battered and quite a mess, and Dukat says, "You brought it on yourself." Sure. Sisko says, oh yeah, just like all your victims.
Ooh, that is a sick burn.
Yeah, it was a burn.
It's so fitting for Dukat that he would blame his victims, yeah.
Totally. Dukat is now really in full rant mode. He says, It always comes back to how I'm a monster. Yeah, dude, yeah. He rants about Sisko always taking the moral high ground, sitting in judgment of everyone else. Sisko just wants to know what Dukat wants from him. Dukat seems happy that they're finally having an honest conversation. And Sisko says he bends the truth to suit himself all the time, and Dukat wants evidence that he does that. So Sisko sort of climbs to his feet, and he says, you were a prefect of Bajor, true, during the occupation, and you were responsible for everything that happened under your command. Dukat's like, true. And then Sisko says, so that means you were responsible for the murder of over 5 million Bajorans. But he says, false. I tried to save lives during my administration. And so Sisko asks for evidence of that.
Yeah.
He says the occupation had been going on for 40 years before he even became prefect, but the planet still wasn't ready for colonization. He was convinced a gentler hand was needed in dealing with Bajorans. And then we see now Damar, the hallucination behind him.
Yes.
And Damar says, it was a noble, if misguided vision. And again, This is from Dukat's brain.
Right. And we get that repeat of the gentler hand was needed.
So in his first act as prefect, he ordered all labor camp commanders to reduce their output quotas by 50%, and he reorganized the camps, abolishing child labor and improving medical care. And after a month, the death rate had dropped by 20%. That's fantastic.
He's such a good guy.
Yeah.
He's only thinking of the little people.
And then he says, how did the Bajorans react to all of this? On his 1-month anniversary, they blew up an orbital dry dock, killing 200 Cardassian soldiers and workers. And during this time, the Major Kira hallucination is taunting him.
Yes.
So he continues to give excuses. He rounded up 200 resistance fighters to be executed, 200 lives for 200 lives. That's justice, not malevolence.
It was the Bajorans' fault. They weren't happy with his gentler approach.
They were not. He kept trying to reach out to the Bajorans, but all he got in return was an assassination attempt on his own station. So more executions, and on it went.
Well, while he's having this rant, behind him are Damar, Kira, and Weyoun, and they all say little pieces during this whole thing. It's really, again, nice little directing choice here.
Yeah, totally agree. He says, I would reach out with a hand of friendship, and time again, they would slap it away. Yeah, right, dude. Oh, he's so delusional.
Well, I think Sisko's kind of figured it out as well, because he makes the comment asking Dukat, are you seeking my approval?
Yeah, and he's like, I'm not going to give it to you. Sisko says, so let me get this straight. You are not responsible for what happened during the occupation. The Bajorans are? Yes, exactly, Dukat says. They were blind, ignorant fools. If they had cooperated, we would have turned their world into a paradise.
Oh.
From the moment we arrived on Bajor, it was clear we were the superior race. Here it comes.
Yes.
But they couldn't accept that. They wanted to be treated as equals, even though they were not equals. Militarily, technologically, culturally, they were inferior. We were almost a century ahead of them in every way. We didn't choose to be the superior race. Fate handed us that role. You have to laugh at that.
Chosen by destiny.
Yeah. If the Bajorans had just accepted their role, it would have been easier. But day after day, they prayed, and night after night, they planted bombs outside of our homes. Those homes that you built on their land. Oh my God, this is so stupid.
Well, they see themselves entirely as the victim. Remember, this is going back to even Garrick said it of the Bajorans. They're more suited to manual labor.
Yeah, right.
To the lesser things.
Absolutely. That's what he said, yes. Pride, stubborn, unyielding pride. They all wore their pride like some twisted badge of honor. And Sisko says, and you hated them for it. And Dukat shouts, of course I hated them. Their superstitions and their cries for sympathy, their treachery and their lies, their smug superiority, the earrings and their broken, wrinkled noses.
Oh.
Sisko says, oh, you should have killed them all. Yes, he shouts.
Oh, wow.
And his hallucinations, too, are all nodding yes at this point.
Well, he finally admits he hates them. Everything about them.
And then he shouts, he should have turned their planet into a graveyard, the likes of which the galaxy had never seen. I should have killed them all.
Every single one of them.
Fortunately, in this scene, Sisko manages to sneak up behind him and hit him over the head, which knocks him out. And Sisko says, and so this is why you're not evil? Question mark.
Oh, that was such a great scene. I mean, he got Dukat basically to admit that he hates them.
And wanted them all dead.
Yes. having the Weyoun as well was just fascinating because Weyoun makes this comment in here about, oh, the Dominion wouldn't have tolerated this. They would have killed every man, woman, and child on the planet.
That's true.
I'm like, oh, yeah, that does seem like the Dominion.
I don't quite understand why Sisko didn't do a little bit more here to restrain Dukat. He should have maybe pushed that big rock onto him or hit him again or something, but instead...
Sisko is completely at fault here.
Yes.
Once he's down, you don't stop hitting until the guts start coming out.
Or at least,
That's the advice.
If you don't want to do that, at least tie him up.
No.
Tie up his arms and his legs or something, but he just leaves him there and tries to escape.
I disagree. This guy is literally Space Hitler. Don't stop until the guts come out.
I do have a Hitler comparison in my overanalysis. Well, Sisko makes a break for it, and he gets outside and makes his way in a very bad storm to the shuttle.
Yeah, not a nice planet.
And just when you think he's going to get away, Dukat stumbles into the shuttle as the door is closing, and a violent fight ensues.
Yep.
At one point, Dukat has a phaser pointed at Sisko, and Sisko shouts for him to just do it. But instead, he throws him out of the shuttle and says, "I'm so glad we had this time together, Benjamin, because we won't be seeing each other for a while. I have unfinished business on Bajor." He says they didn't know what it was like to be my enemy. From this day forward, Bajor is dead. And this time, even their emissary won't be able to save them. Sisko does get one more good kick in on Dukat's knee.
Oh, yeah.
But Dukat punches him again, gets in the shuttle with all of his hallucinations next to him, and flies away.
That was great. As the boarding ramp is closing, standing behind him are Kira, Damar, and Weyoun.
Yes.
Again, another great little scene.
Because he's telling himself in his brain that he's won. And it's awful.
Oh, yeah, he's absolutely won.
Well, the Defiant now is plotting its course to leave when Miles picks up a signal from Gul Dukat's shuttle. But in the next scene, we found that they've rescued Sisko. They don't waste a lot of time with this rescue stuff.
No.
And Sisko is in sickbay, and they say they didn't have time to locate Dukat's shuttle, which is convenient.
Of course.
And they're on their way to the rendezvous with the convoy. So now we go to sickbay, which I didn't think we had on the Defiant.
It's probably in the mess hall.
Maybe. And Sisko is recovering with some pieces of equipment, like taped to his forehead. Dax says she's notified Starfleet of Dukat's last position, and they'll find him. But Sisko's like, no, they won't. He says, sometimes life seems so complicated, and nothing is truly good or truly evil. Everything seems to be a shade of gray. And then you spend some time with a man like Dukat, and you realize that there is such a thing as truly evil. She asks what he's going to do about it, and he says, what I'm not going to do is let him destroy Bajor. I fear no evil. From now on, it's him or me. The end.
Such a freaking awesome speech from Sisko.
I have in all caps, finally. Finally. Everybody sees what I see. Finally. Ugh. All right. Do you have overanalysis? I would be shocked if you didn't.
Okay, my first overanalysis point is exactly what you just said.
Oh.
Finally.
Finally.
Finally. Garak and Kira, and now finally Sisko has come around to, you see Dukat, you just shoot Dukat.
Yes.
There's no other in between.
Yeah.
So next thing, did Dukat injure Sisko deliberately? Did he actually break Sisko's arm when he was passed out?
I hadn't considered that, but possibly.
I think he absolutely did.
Yeah.
He needed to disable Sisko because he has this weird complex about saving Sisko kind of thing.
He does, yeah. No, that's a good guess. I would not have thought that. But yes, he probably did. And also, I don't think there was another Starfleet officer. If there was, he killed him.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That was my follow-on from this, which is, if there was another officer, this McConnell, Dukat killed him.
Yeah.
This also ties back, I think, to Dukat needs his enemy. And it's not his friend. He knows he's his enemy. He needs them to know that they've been defeated.
Yes.
He kind of brought this up with Weyoun about why you couldn't kill everyone on Earth, because they need to know they've been defeated.
Yes.
And I think this is why he doesn't kill Sisko here, why he lets him go and calls for him, because he wants Sisko to witness his victory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, I totally agree.
Next point, and maybe this is more of an observation, but I liked how the different characters were displaying different parts of Sisko's personality. I think Damar was like his ego.
Mm-hmm.
Weyoun was like the Empire or the Dominion, the outside influence, Central Command telling him to do these things.
Right.
And Kira was the representation of his absolute failure at everything he's done in life.
Yeah.
like the Cardassians do, they have to have someone to blame for everything.
Right.
And Kira was the external force that had been the thing that had caused his downfall. Not that anything he had done had resulted in that.
Right, yeah.
I think that was a really good storyline choice of how to do that. And my final point.
Yeah.
Unless there's a final point.
Yeah, there might be.
Has Dukat been like this all the time, seeing these people? Have they always been there?
Oh.
Have they been there since he lost his position on Bajor? Maybe they've been there all his life, and they're now just taking different forms, or forms that we've seen in the show so far.
Interesting. Maybe they're the prophets.
They would be very direct if they're the prophets.
No, they would talk in riddles.
Yes, they would drive him nuts by talking in riddles, yes.
Yeah, they certainly wouldn't be complimenting him. Well, maybe because one bad thing didn't turn him into this. So it's possible he's just been hiding it. I mean, they make a whole point of telling us that he's managed to convince the doctors he's completely recovered. So it's possible he's been hiding something like this his whole life.
Exactly. And going back to the Cardassians try and hide any kind of mental illness.
They don't ask for help, or look for it,
So that's what led me onto these characters that have always been with Dukat.
Yeah, maybe.
It almost makes me want to go back and rewatch Dukat episodes and see if there were any hints for it.
Knock yourself out.
So, over to you, Kim. What do you have?
Well, what a pathetic creature Dukat is. If only the Bajorans had just accepted that they were inferior and just worshipped him, everything would have been great.
I'm putting on my Damar hat here and saying, no, he's a great man.
There's a lot of parallels between this episode and Duet.
Yeah.
With the sort of ranting person justifying what they've done, except obviously that person was pretending to be ranting, but this person really believes what he's saying.
Yeah.
This episode had a much more satisfying ending to it, I think, than that one, even though Dukat gets away. But, I mean, Dukat gets away because they wanted to keep the villain alive, not because that's what really would have happened.
Okay, what you said there, this pops into my head. Duet and Maritza was doing these little ranting statements about my men were just doing their jobs kind of things. Was Maritza emulating how Gulda Heel, who was the actual running the camp, was he emulating how he talked? The way Dukat is ranting, is this typical of the Cardassian higher command? Is this their method of communicating?
Totally. I totally think that that's true. And we can base it on their show trials. Everything is for show.
Yeah.
And drama. So, yeah, they probably do have to be like that. It's probably a big part of their job to be performers.
Oh.
Which is even dumber.
Yeah. I didn't even think about the trial thing. Oh, that's a good one.
Well, as I said, today we were releasing Sacrifice of Angels, coincidentally.
Yeah.
But in that episode, we discussed the difference between what Dukat wants and what the founders want. And what I don't think we really talked about in great detail, because it wasn't super evident, to me at least, until we saw this episode. But Dukat wants to be admired and to rule. And the founders just want the solids to either just be quiet, like little ants, or all be dead. And these are two very different things.
Yes. I would go maybe even a little further of Dukat wants to be worshipped.
He does. My next point is that the writers of this show are frequently bad at writing good characters, but they seem to understand evil and villainy. And again, the Cardassians seem to be so based on Nazis, and even these kind of manic episodes of Dukat, it sounds a lot like the rumored rants of Hitler.
Well, Dukat's ranting does look like some of the speeches.
I know, right? That's interesting.
Particularly the approach of starting off very softly and then working up into this sort of frenzy.
Because it is a frenzy at the end.
Yeah.
And then to move away a little bit from Dukat, what is up with Bashir being such an ass? That's 2 times now that he has behaved this way to his commanding officer.
Yeah.
Maybe now that his secret is out about how his DNA resequencing has happened.
Yeah.
He's like now comfortable feeling superior to everyone and just letting it hang out there.
Here's a theory. Perhaps the ban on augments in Starfleet isn't actually because they're augments. It's because at the end of the day, they all become insufferable.
Because we
don't really have a problem about the eugenics wars or Khan or anything like that. It's just because the augments are like insufferable.
Yeah, I can believe that for sure. But I just can't for the life of me figure out why people like this character so much. He's terrible. Ugh. And then my last point is that I had this realization that Miles really hasn't been in this season at all. He's just had a few scenes here and there, but barely used in season 6.
I'm wondering whether we should look up his movie career at this point.
I was wondering that too. Is this the time when he was off making movies?
Yeah. Was he away making movies?
Yeah, I don't know. Now he's just collecting his checks. After all the torturing they did of him in the first 5 seasons. Now he's just, pushing buttons. All right, well, I have nothing in my Women in the Future section. Wasn't a lot of women in this episode, so I'm just going to move on to rating. Thumbs up, thumbs down, or neutral. What is your rating?
Absolute thumbs up. Great episode. Just a fascinating insight into Dukat, which I think we knew most of this already, but getting Dukat to admit that really at the end of the day, he hates the Bajorans is the real standout from this. Sisko is fantastic. Avery does an amazing job of bringing the character to life. Really enjoyable. I will add that after watching this, it's amazing to think people see Dukat as some kind of hero.
I know.
To quote one of my friends, when I told her we hadn't caught up with a particular TV show yet, she said, "Sort your life out." And that's what I would say to people who look at Dukat as a positive character.
Yeah, I read that somewhere that the Deep Space Nine showrunners were shocked that people so loved this character.
Yeah.
There's nothing about him to love. I mean, I guess his portrayal can be kind of fun to watch. The actor is very flamboyant in it and theatrical, but the character itself is awful.
I will say about Marc Alaimo, he does an amazing job of walking that line between a caricatured mustachioed villain who twirls his mustache and is totally over the top.
Yeah.
And just dialing it back to somebody who is just evil enough to be believable.
Yeah. No, he definitely crosses that line here and there throughout various episodes. I would say in this episode, he walks right on that tightrope with a very strong performance. I agree. All the performances were very strong in this episode. I certainly give it a thumbs up.
Yay.
There were some things that I couldn't watch.
Yeah.
The violent stuff. And there's also the scene where when Sisko is just trying to get onto the shuttle and he's walking through that storm and there's so many flashing lights. And of course, flashing lights give me migraines, so I couldn't really look at the screen.
Yeah.
But it's not like that was a very complicated scene, so I still knew what was happening. But when they were having their hand-to-hand battle at the end, it's just like in any movie. I can't watch stuff like that. It's just too awful and too violent. I don't know if it's because I'm just hypersensitive, but I can't watch people inflict pain on others. It's too awful. But that was a tiny part of it. And to a large degree, they would cut away. So you weren't seeing the really bad things, but you could still hear them and you still knew what was happening. And that was enough for me to be sort of turned off by that. But still a great episode. I really feel like season 1 of Duet is quite a nice tie-in to this.
Yeah.
Some of the things that were covered in that episode now, we've learned so much more about it and we see it more in action and it all makes so much more sense. Where it was almost like Duet was maybe, we weren't quite ready for that, but we were ready for it now. It was good.
We've had this whole build-up, even with very likable characters or characters who've really kind of had a redemption arc.
Yeah.
Like Garrick. They still have this Cardassian bigotry built in.
Agreed.
As you followed the series, it naturally comes through to this progression of what Dukat is.
Yeah.
I would be worried if I was Bajor right now.
Oh, I would too. Hopefully Sisko warns somebody and they start watching out for Dukat to turn up there because it sounds like that's where he's going. I don't know how much damage one person can cause, but there's huge weapons he could get his hands on, I would think, pretty easily.
Yeah.
He could poison the atmosphere like what Sisko did in For the Uniform. Sorry to bring that up.
That's being retconned out.
All right. Okay, that wraps up Season 6, Episode 11. Come back next week for Episode 12. In the meantime, if you'd like to send us your own over-analysis of this or any episode, or if you just want to say something nice, you can email us at ReBingeIT@gmail.com or tweet us at ReBingeIT. We're also on Instagram and YouTube at ReBingeIT. You can go to talkthroughmedia.com to listen to the other podcasts in our network, and also you can leave feedback for individual episodes there. Talk Through Media has a Patreon, patreon.com/Star Trek TTM, which supports all of the podcasts in the network.
Thanks for joining us on the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast.
That's it for me.
And that's it from me.